That's a big girl. I wanted to talk to you about batching repairs. And if you're like me and I have 2 kids under 2 at home, I don't really have time to be working on my truck every single night. So I try to do everything all at once. And today I'm going to be doing the radiator, the serpentine belt, and replacing this older cold air intake. So I might as well do all those together because they're kind of in the same area. And you know, if I remove this cold air intake, that gives me a ton of access to the serpentine belt, to the radiator, and with the radiator I can get to the serpentine belt a lot easier. It just makes life easier. And at a later time, I have to replace my headlights, I have to do the transmission oil cooler, so it creates a really good workflow. You do things a lot faster. I mean, it's in a production shop, that's the way you do things. If you're a returning watcher, you know I'm always preaching checking your parts, checking your parts, checking your parts. And most of my other spiels are about just damage, so that way you're not taking the vehicle entirely apart and then finding a damaged piece, then you have to put all the old parts back on. And I think a radiator is a great example of why you should check it in just for procedure's sake, so you can see what the radiator looks like, what parts you need to remove to get to the radiator, where all your hoses connect. I mean, this is a pretty simple radiator, hose in, hose out, transmission cooler line, and it just teaches you a lot about the procedure without knowing the procedure. I didn't look up any procedure to do this on my truck. Yeah, I've had a bunch of them apart, but now I can look at this and know where it fastens, where it mounts, where my oil cooler lines go, where the radiator hoses are. And I can get an idea of what I need to take apart, so I'm not stripping the whole truck down for no reason and taking unnecessary parts off. This is just the prime example of checking your parts. All right, now we're getting down to the dirty work. I'm gonna pull this fender liner so I can get access to the low radiator hose, because on a Duramax, there's no drain petcock. Be prepared to take a bath. This should go pretty quickly, because if you've seen some of my other videos, I've broken almost all the clips off in this anyways, and I just don't put them back in. So it should be fast. All right, we got that liner out. Now you can see right in here is the low radiator hose we're gonna pull. And while that's draining, I'm gonna go ahead and take out everything else I can. I'm all about maximizing time in the shop, so anything that can be draining, like anything that can be mindlessly doing something else without me, then I'm gonna do that. So draining fluid and then taking the radiator out. I've got a genius alert here. If you're looking for a good drain pan, these little Rubbermaid totes from Walmart or wherever, some big box store, they're really cheap and they're really deep drain pans, which is nice for coolant, because I think this thing takes like 10 gallons. I feel like I made that up. Like 10 gallons, 6 gallons, something like that. Now on these radiator hoses, there's a locking ring on the bottom hose, and you get a little sharp tool and pull the ring toward you, and it starts to set out. See that ring? I mean, they're made so they come out and just slide lock like that, but I usually end up taking the whole ring out, that way I don't lose it, because sometimes the ring gets caught on that edge, and when you pull the hose out, it goes twing and flies off. And all right, here's that ring I was talking about. Make sure you remember what orientation it goes on the hose. It can only go one way, but it still will help you. You don't have to try to find the combination of where it locks in. Make sure you hang on to this thing and don't lose it. Now, if your truck is like mine and has a lot of miles on it, it's going to be a stiff hose to get off there. I just had this off flushing the whole cooling system a little while ago, so mine should pop right off, and we'll have Niagara Falls here in a minute. If you care about your shop floor, I would just cover it up, because you're going to get covered in coolant. I like to wait to pull the top cap so it has some sort of vapor lock, so I'm not getting full gush when this thing comes undone. And it gives you a little bit of control, I guess. And you can kind of control the flow. You can probably hear it draining right now. It's just dripping. So I'm gonna slowly pull the hose back and try to save my shop floor here. I'm working in a tin can right now and it's pouring outside. So if this audio sucks post-production, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna work on getting the cold air intake out of the way so I can get to the rest of the bolts on the radiator, and maybe I'll do one of those cool time-lapse thingies to give you some sort of footage to look at. Alright, now I'm gonna go down both sides of the radiator, take the bolts out now that I have really good access, open access. And then I'll probably try to do a close-up on the transmission cooling lines to show you how to pull those out, and then we're pretty much done. The radiator will come out. I'm not going to get any close-up footage of pulling the bolts. You can just look at the new radiator and it'll give you a good idea of where the fasteners are. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this completely handheld with the camera, so I apologize for the shaky footage. We're going to pop off this little plastic cap. If your truck is old like mine, be very careful, that plastic's brittle. Just slowly slide that back out of the way, and then you'll see a little, right where the spade of this is, right where the point of this pry tool is, there's a little ring right there that we're going to pry upon. It's exactly like the coolant line ring, but a little smaller. You get a little pick tool in there and slowly pry up. You don't want to lose this. I already pulled the bottom one and dropped it in the drain pan, so I'm going to find fun finding that. You slowly pull up. The nice thing is when you go put this back in, you just shove the lines in. You put your ring right back in there and then just cram the line in and it'll snap into place, so you don't have to worry about this. The bottom one is a complete pain in the butt. Might have to turn the camera off because I can't get this one one-handed. I think you're supposed to be able to pull up on it and then pull out on the line, but I usually just pull it right out so that way it doesn't get in my way and I don't lose it. It's surprisingly hard to do one-handed. My heart goes out to all the people taking selfies. Alright. Salvage the ring. If your new radiator comes with these, save the old ones. These will save your life someday when you go clink the clip off of something. I can't find it. Wiggle and tug. Wiggle and tug harder than that. Oh, wiggle and tug. That one's got a good seal. Alright, I'm gonna have to shut the camera off and come back. Okay, I got it now. And then that just comes out. And then when you go to put this in, if you leave your clip in there, locked into place, you just push it in and that clip will lock right under that bell. That's all you have to do is push it in, which is great for the bottom one because that one is really hard to get to. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and pull my top radiator hose on the other side of the truck, and I think I'm going to end up pulling out the driver's side fender liner because there are some bolts down the fan shroud and down the radiator that I need to pull out. So I might as well just open that up and get that ready to go. Alright, now we're going to remove this transmission controller off of the fan shroud. Luckily mine's zip tied on. And then we're going to undo the top bolts for the fan shroud. Then underneath the transmission controller, I don't know if I'll be able to get a good shot of it or not. There are two clips down there. They're a pain in the butt. And even the lower fan shroud bolts are going to be really hard to get to also. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, moment of truth. Should come right out. Famous last word. Let's do a brush guard. All right, now that you got the old radiator out, now it's a good time to put them both side by side and look at them. Again, this comes back to checking parts. I'm really annoying that way. Make sure they have 2 transmission cooling line ports. Make sure all the ports are in the right way. You have all the fasteners you need, because you could get a radiator that's a little bit different, and that does happen. And now's a good time to check that. You don't want to put this big behemoth back in the truck and then realize like, oh no, this is the wrong one. So I'm going to look at this and get my grommets swapped over and get this one ready to go in the truck. This is a really good time to talk about why I'm replacing this radiator. This truck has 350,000 miles on it, and when I pull steep grades with the trailer, it overheats. And you know, I've gone through most of the cooling system, I've flushed it, I've done all that. And this radiator just has so many thin tubes in it that I'm worried that there's sediments built up in there just over time. They won't flush out. I mean, that stuff becomes just compact in there and you can't get it out. So I'm just gonna put a new radiator in. I've done all the rest of the cooling system. I might as well do that and see if it helps. I'm also going to do the transmission cooler too, and I'll do that in another video. Oh, I think I'm going to break for lunch before I put the new behemoth radiator in. I feel undernourished to lift that. Alright, boys and girls, it's what we've all been dreading. I mean, waiting for. We're going to put this behemoth radiator back in. When I put this back in, I'm going to leave all the covers over the transmission cooling line ports and even the coolant ports just to avoid getting contaminants in there. Take some wiggling. Cool thing about watching a YouTube video instead of making a YouTube video is you can just skip all the hard parts. Whew. Took a lot out of me. Well, it's in, and I hope I never have to take it out again. Alright, now I'm going to work on getting everything bolted up, get the hoses back connected. I think I'm probably just going to skip filming all that stuff. The radiator's all bolted up, all the hoses are hooked up, the transmission lines are hooked up. Now it's time to fill our fluid. One thing I would highly recommend is to not button everything up around it until you fill it with fluid. That way you can check for leaks easier, so you have all the access you had to the hoses you originally had in case you do have a leak. So don't put the fender liners back in, don't put the intake back on until you fill it full of fluid. I think the system takes about 6 gallons. It probably won't take all 6 if you're like me and you didn't flush the block. I already flushed the system, I don't know, a month or so ago to try to see if it would help, so I'm not going to flush the block again. Alright, now it's time to fill her up. Takes forever to fill this system up. Air just gets trapped in here easily. Just go very slowly. Take your time. This is already boring me. Where are you, Christmas? Why can't I find you? I'm about 4 gallons out of 6 in right now. Now's a good time to walk all around the truck, look underneath it, shine a light everywhere where the hoses, everywhere where a hose connects to the radiator, just make sure nothing's leaking. I can't hear anything leaking, but it's good to just check that out and make sure there's nothing leaking onto the floor. So this is why you walk around and check for leaks. This hose down here has a bad O-ring in it. So now I get to drain the whole system again and put an O-ring in it. Oh, I have to admit defeat for the evening. Man, the internet rules. The other night when I left here in despair and went home and ate my feelings with my wife and kids, I was looking at the forums, and which can be dangerous, but I found a part number for an O-ring for a Volkswagen that would fit this. It was $1.49 and I could get it the next morning on a Sunday, Memorial Day weekend, so I figured what the heck, I might as well try it, and I just put it in today, and it fits, no leaks, we're good to go. I always say the internet's my favorite place to visit, but now I think it's one of my best friends. Man, thanks again, internet. So I'm gonna go topside and get everything buttoned back up, and I'm not gonna finish buttoning all this up until I get it running and make sure the coolant's topped off, again, just to check for leaks, and then I'll button up all the lower shields and all that stuff. This radiator swap in my truck has been a prime example of why I preach double check everything before you take it out on the road. Even if you're swapping out your headlights, check the bulbs before nighttime. You don't want to be on the road and realize you don't have headlights. Same thing with this. I had one seal failure, and then I had a fitting on the radiator from the factory that wasn't tight. So I had one coolant leak and one transmission fluid leak that I fixed right here in the shop before I was out on the highway with it. You know, the old me would have just buttoned this thing right up and hit the highway and thought nothing of it until 50 miles down the road I had no coolant and no transmission fluid and really been screwed. It just goes to show you it pays to double check stuff as you're putting it together and as you're filling fluids. That pretty much wraps this up, and we'll see how much better my truck cools pulling a trailer now. Just be sure to top off your transmission fluid too, because there's a transmission cooler in this radiator. And don't forget to do what everybody else on YouTube tells you to do, and like and subscribe, and hit me up in the comments down below if you have any questions. And I like doing stuff the easiest way I can possibly do it. If you see me doing something the hard way and you have a better way of doing it, please tell me. I love doing stuff an easier way. And as always, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on You Break, You Fix It.